All right. So, wanted to do this Zoom meeting with Coach Todd to kind of just go over his final thoughts on the 12-week Broadsheet CrossFit Nutrition Challenge that just ended up. So, Todd, what are some thoughts that you have?
Yeah, it was awesome. This was the second one I've done at the gym. Both have been 12 weeks long. The last one, it was very similar to the last one, except we got a little bit more structured in that uh, the goal of it. And I'll kind of fill you in there and you participate a little bit. But we started off with a detox, not your traditional detox. The detox, there were some products, and it wasn't necessarily a calorie restriction program, but it could be. So if you took, there was about 20 people in the competition, and I'd say 16 of them had a goal of just losing body fat. Other things too, like being better in the gym and whatnot. But so we could time that first 10 days. It was a nice jump start with some products and do a little bit of calorie restriction to jump start them to their goals, right? So that was great. And like part of the other thing was in this detox was not just detoxing like you think of juice cleanse and stuff like that. It was more eliminating foods,
Yeah.
even some that we may think are good. Like I had tested to find peppers, and those nightshades are not very favorable to me. So most people don't think of all these vegetables having issues, but they can have potential issues. So it was about really eliminating a lot of, not so much the quantity of food, but the variety on
Yeah.
this 10-day window. And then like coffee was a big one. And so people really had a hard time with that. And then slowly introducing it back. So the first 10 days was, all right, here's a group of foods that's already going to be limiting because I'm giving you a list and there's no processed and all that stuff that everyone's used to. And then in the middle of it, it would shrink down. And like a couple days, the only options, you ask anyone in the group that really followed it, they're probably pretty sick of salmon still. Or like when you were doing it, like trying to get halibut and stuff like that, it's
Well, I
very limiting.
actually still, like one cool thing from that is I still do buy smoked salmon, and I find that like when I'm snacking now, uh, like I'll choose smoked salmon, which is an awesome thing to snack on.
It is. I love it too. I did this 10-day detox only, and that's when I found smoked salmon. Not that I've never had smoked salmon before, but
I like
like
that.
to eat it in quantity,
Yeah.
right? So I still, every time I go to Whole Foods, they have like a real nice wild caught mixed with all the farm raised shit. But I get the 8 ounce, which is about 65 grams of protein, like always. It's a nice one.
I've had a few moments where like I was real hungry and just needed something real quick and ate the smoked salmon and ate so much of it. Like I'd have a huge bit of it in my hand. I'd feel like Schmeagol in Lord of the Rings when he's just eating raw fish. Like
That's
it's
great.
just like, oh my God. But yeah, it's like you're getting in the good fats, you're getting in the omegas, the protein, and you're
Yep.
not eating something that's not good for you. So it's just like awesome that, I could even just add that to my diet.
Yeah. So this whole first 10 days was, somewhat of an elimination diet. And then we'd start reintroducing things. And the feedback from this group last time was very good, but there was a little fall off. It ended up getting the people that I think really knew they had a chance to win, where this seemed to be even some of the folks that they were just doing it to feel better and gain thing. And it like the winning the money at the end was like, not their main goal, right? And so that
So
was good to
cool.
see.
So if you don't know, it was a grand, right?
Yeah, $1,000.
$1,000.
So it was cool to see the feedback from everyone about the things that they didn't know bothered them, and like introducing coffee back in and then seeing what that was like, or sugar cravings, or
A lot of
even
people said that because of the taking it out and then reintroducing back in, and myself included, I actually lowered my coffee intake because I was just like way more conscious about how much coffee I was drinking before.
yeah. Yeah, I forget who I was talking to exactly, but I was they were really struggling to not have the coffee. And I said to them, if you really have to have it, you can't just have it. It's not going to ruin the diet, but I think you should be conscious of how bad you need it right now. And that's kind of what this is all about, right? So coffee it's a whole different thing. There's some if you're really fatigued and you're using that for energy, that's not a good sign. It's one
Yeah.
of the only antioxidants that the general population get, even from shit coffee, which is 99% of it. There is a lot of antioxidants, so there's good things, but you shouldn't need it to get up and thrive. And that was kind of the point there.
I think side note, just how this actually helped me as well, is just when I started doing that with coffee, I was so reliant on such a big part of my life, but I realized, hey, look, I could still do things without it. And I actually applied that to my drinking, because drinking was so negative towards what we were doing with the trying to eat well.
Yeah.
And, socially it's fine, but like I was probably drinking when I would go out with friends too much. So I found too, like I could even limit it. I kind of did the same approach I did with coffee. And
Yeah.
I found like, hey, look, you can go out with buddies and have 2 drinks instead of, 7, and you still have good conversation, still
Yeah.
enjoy the time. And so it was like almost like that built up like a level of mental strength for me too. With
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like just the first 10 days of this 12-week program. And the other piece was, this wasn't a weight loss program. I don't love the whole 30s and things like that, because it seems 30 days doesn't really give you the time you need to develop new habits. So like research shows, I think the actual number is like 66 days, but I always use 2 months and then kind of build beyond it to develop new habits, something that becomes a habit, right? Like it's built into their daily routine and stuff like that. At the same time, you can develop bad habits that way too. But so this was about habit forming and all that, but like I said, it wasn't about just weight loss. It was about improving overall health, right? So to win this, I wanted people like, there's a few people, like I said, they're 4 of 20. They're already pretty lean, right? Like that, everyone knows that's been doing this for a while. Like the hardest part, I think, is that last couple percent that you really want, depending where you're at. So I wanted to make that fair for, the numbers we generally use for really, really lean is about 10% body fat for men. And that's typically seeing the upright line and all the abdominal muscles. And then it's about 17%, 16, 17 for women. So if I had someone on the guy side that was 14% and the women's it was 20, 21, right? They don't have much to go to get to just optimal. So you got to weigh that out and all that stuff. So it was cool to see a nice mixture, but generally, people want to lose body fat, right?
Yeah. One of the things I loved though too about it was just that when you were giving out information, it was palpable and simple, but then there was so much more content on things that would improve your life via nutrition that could help people like that don't have a lot of body fat to lose, maybe, but or like, because performance and feeling good and health comes into a lot more than am I skinny and fat. And like you obviously drove that point home the whole time, which and then how to achieve that, which made, no matter who you were, you were having this just amazing effect on your life, so
And that was the goal, right? So like kind of the consistent thing that I've seen, even if they were on the low end or the high end of body fat or their goals, was protein intake. I think we're bombarded a lot with having to have this perfect plate of balance and protein and fat and vegetables and eat all these vegetables and all. And that may work for some people. There's other factors that are involved too. And like, it was different for everyone, but I might say, well, food prep, and it just wasn't in the cards. Some people had weekend tournaments with their kids and there's all these different things. So the central theme I had was, especially if you're trying to lose body fat, is I'm going to give you the diet and the goals as simple as possible to lose body fat over everything, because that improves pretty much everything, right? You could supplement all you want, you could train all the extra pull-ups you want, but nothing's going to beat losing 5-10 pounds of body fat on the rig, right?
100%.
The first thing you notice when you lose about 5 pounds of fat is how your hands don't rip as much,
Yeah.
right? And how easy it feels on the rig. So that was my
I
focus.
always have trouble with that as a CrossFit coach because, if someone gained weight and they'll be like, man, I just feel so slow. I feel so weak. And then I have to be like, well, it's because
You
you're
start
fat.
pinching them.
nah, but that is the truth. Like I felt that. And, it's like, it's not the answer you want to hear because it's the hard one. You wish that you could just, I'm just going to do pull-ups every day and that'll help. And it will, but not even close to as much as just losing that 5-10 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you look at, again, back to the research, if you look at, I guess I'll fill in just briefly on the different hormones and the calipers of what we did there for the people that may watch this that have no clue. But nothing improves your health markers more than going from certain body fat when you have excess to lowering that. It improves everything, right? So if that's true, I want to give the diet, and it may not be long term, to support getting body fat off as fast as possible, but maintaining lean muscle, right? Because, just from a confidence standpoint, you could lose 30 pounds, but if you lost 20 pounds of muscle and 10 pounds of fat, your performance is going to go down drastically. So they were the two goals of mine consistently, was get body fat off as fast as possible and do that by keep lean tissue, and do that by giving people a baseline of protein to intake. In some cases, when it got fairly drastic, we might go when I say just protein, I mean just animal protein. So you're going to get a load of fat in there too. It's really just eliminating carbohydrates.
It's more simple, like you said, you're shown like I should have this much carbs, this much fat, this much protein, this much vegetables, this much antioxidants, this much fiber, whatever. All of it could be very helpful, but the problem is it's just so much to take in when you're dealing with, like you said, a guy that might have like, I'm on the road and I can't prep. So it's like, okay, let's give you this protein baseline based on who you, or let's start with a protein baseline based on who you are and what you're trying to do. And most of us was lose a lot of fat because that was the priority at first. Now some of our goals will change. Like if we do another challenge, we get a different individualization. But yeah. And that protein baseline was very helpful because it was like, cool, you could just focus on one thing.
And I think always, to me, that's the starting thing to focus on.
Yeah.
It's the most important macronutrient by far. It's easy, and it's very difficult, as I sent out one of those emails to the group, it's very difficult to turn protein into fat, pure protein.
Yeah.
So just, and the other thing is, you don't want this diet where you feel restrictive. As soon as you feel restrictive, you kind of naturally fight against it. So a lot of times what I would do was not limit. I would actually try and get them to overeat protein.
And they would undereat other things because they're not hungry.
By default, yeah, like the total calorie, if you think about the density of a macronutrient, and we absolutely need amino acids, right, for a lot of things. If you think about the density of it, like if I'm going to eat a steak for that, you're talking like, 150 calories would give you probably 40 grams or something like that. If you wanted to do that with pinto beans, you would need 600 calories of the pinto beans to get the protein you need, the amino acids. And what happens is that extra 450 calories you have to digest. You have the potential of having some of these vegetables would be more likely to have a inflammatory mark, if you have issues digesting them or whatever, or some kind of like intolerability to it. So that was always the first baseline, no matter where they were, is like get that protein in, right?
So we're kind of coming down to the wire, but I just wanted
to. We got
like 5 minutes, but
okay, I'll speed it up.
So, yeah.
Go ahead. you
Well, I
want me
just wanted to say too, one of the things, if you haven't done the program, one of the greatest things about this reset was just that you were so good on educating. You just took such an educational approach instead of a, hey, do this and just you'll have results, trust me. And it's like the education is now something that you can't unlearn, right? So when somebody has that subconsciously in their head now for the rest of their lives, they're going to know that, and it's going to be harder for them to avoid that education. So you can fall off the wagon and you can make poor choices later on, but you'll always have that in your head, and it'll be easier to get back on track and harder to get off track in general. So I think that's something that I was just it's so much harder to put into a program like this because you have to teach everybody. It takes a lot longer. You have to write up a lot more.
the daily interaction too. Yeah, I'd say a good portion of the people that put the effort in, they have in their toolbox the ability to always go back to this simple stuff. I mean, you can, like we said, like you said earlier, you can tweak it more and more. So with short time, the other piece that was involved in this was the calibration and measurements with the program we use called Metabolic Analytics. Just turned to hormonal balance or something like that, but through the Strength Sensei. And that's where we measure 14 points in the body, put them into an algorithm in the computer, and it spits out your worst hormonal profile. And we would kind of base the diet on that to a certain extent. And then some people, you could take it further by taking supplements catered to those hormonal profiles. So if you elected to do that, that would just be a way to speed it up. Not everyone did that. A good portion of the people did, but it is a lot. So I would say if this program carried on the next 12 weeks, we'd probably spin towards that direction to the people that really got down to their target weight or whatever. So
that's definitely the route that I've started to take now that I'm where I'm at. So, I mean, yeah, I love that. I think that's just so much further than where most people are going with just a challenge or whatever. And
I mean, reset. Everyone's going to be unique, right? Like a lot of the things work for the general, like to get you started, the protein, and then, probably most of the stuff will work for about 70%. You'll have the outliers on both sides of the, one way and the other, far like someone may need less protein, more carbs, vice versa, right? But anyway, like, so there was also the back and forth feedback daily in Wodify where the people put their meals in. Generally in Wodify, sometimes, I would get a whole snapshot of a week, and Roma was good. He would highlight the things where he thought he, veered off or whatever. So it just popped out, right? So we'd go every day, like make little tweaks. And it was really good to see, there was some trust, I think, at first. The big one I remember was Richard, right? I asked him to do the exact opposite of what he was doing. Like 3 weeks, he got an initial drop off, then and a big lull. And then I asked him to do something, fairly drastic, I guess, from his daily intake. And he said, I was a little resistant. I thought I wouldn't have energy. But once he started feeling it in the gym, and then he had a big drop off. He was one of the finalists. He started believing, they all trusted me. I didn't have anyone really resisting. They would go back and forth with why and stuff like that, but it was really nice to see. So we would measure and do that stuff, depending how much people wanted to see it, maybe once a week in some cases. But it was looking really good. There was probably about 10 people ultimately in the running for the money. And then things got difficult 3 weeks ago or so as you closed, and, we had less contact with each other, but still generally the same people were there putting stuff, so the finalists were all three of the Obergs, right? Jackie, Pat, and their daughter, Jess Houseman, Amanda, Wyatt, Richard, Matt Whitehead. I believe that was it. Sorry if I missed one of you, but they were all like, a couple of them didn't really have that much to lose, Amanda and Jackie. So they were more like, critiquing it, structuring a little bit different. The other ones all lost like well over 20 pounds. It was pretty impressive for 12 weeks. That's that's where I want to be at, like that 1 to 2 pounds a week. That's when you're, and by those calipers, we're able to measure body fat loss, not just weight loss. That was another thing that really stood out to these people is, you know, about 6 weeks in, we saw a big drop of weight loss, but we also saw muscle loss. So that was one of the people we had to really focus on the protein and say, like, here, this is what's happening. Like, yeah, you're losing some water weight initially, is, you know, and all that. You're losing a little bit of body fat, but your issues in the gym are because you're not keeping the protein up while we're limiting the calories. Yeah. So anyway, the finalists came down to those folks. Really, the top dogs were Jess, Richard, Matt, and the other ones weren't that far off after there. But the above and beyond, a few steps above all them, was probably the youngest in the group, with the exception of Miranda, who didn't do the detox part, who just kind of followed along, was Jess Oberg. And she was the one going in. I thought there was going to be the most resistance. Like, didn't have a lot of structure to her diet. Didn't have a lot of structure to her diet.
Relatively new with CrossFit, you know?
Yeah, CrossFit, not going to the gym a lot, just out of school and all that stuff. But, I mean, she was the most diligent, even when she resisted, of putting her information in, sticking to the plan. Even throughout this Corona, I'd say she was the one that did not change one bit. There's a couple others too, but really impressive results. It was great to see. She seems like she has a plan to, like, continue forward with her goals and just keep it going. She lost close to 30 pounds of body fat, which was just amazing. And, you know, lost more than that all in. Impacted the way she would go to the gym, started being more frequent there, hitting PRs, things were moving better. And just really blew me away. But all the other ones in the finalists, and there were some people outside of that were really awesome too. It was great to see.
I got to roll. Yeah, man. I think, you know, just from the camaraderie too, you know, it helped me stay motivated. I ended up doing, I think I lost like 15 pounds. Honestly, so I had not realized I had put it on until I weighed myself before and said, holy cow, I'm going to jump in. But I just loved seeing how everybody else was getting so confident and feeling so much better about themselves. It went into me, my performance leaped. And my training was still the same. It just, you know, being consistent with eating well and then losing that body fat and helping to build more muscle. You know, it was just so effective for me. And, you know, so I thought it was amazing seeing everybody. And hopefully when we run this again, you know, more people consider joining in, because it's such an amazing tool. And also, if you did the challenge, I hope you keep it up. And then this is kind of the moment where Todd can now work with you a little deeper. And it's kind of the same way for me as a coach, whereas I love teaching the beginning stuff, but I also have that knowledge. I can go very deep down the rabbit hole of, you know, specifics. And I never really get to work in that realm all that much because a lot of people don't want to get there. So now we're kind of there and it's like, cool, now let's get even further and further, because, you know, that's how we are as CrossFitters. We're not just checking the box. We're trying to crush the box, you know? So.
Yep.
All right, brother, I got to roll. Thank you. Awesome challenge. I'll see you soon.
Congrats, Jess.
Congrats, Jess. You killed it.